I am back. Today I want to talk about endlessness and how I think it's doing a lot more in horror than we give it credit for. Because almost every horror story, no matter how extreme it gets, falls back on one thing: when will it end? And it's why when you're watching a horror film, sometimes you just stop rooting for an escape and hoping that they just die. Like, if that's me, just kill me. Just end it. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And once you start paying attention, you see this in horror everywhere. Think about an endless hallway. There's no monster, there's nothing chasing you, and yet the further you walk, the more scared you get. Your brain expects some sort of punctuation, a door or maybe a corner, something to tell you that you're traveling somewhere. And when nothing is happening, the discomfort sets in anyway. The other day I watched the film adaptation of Stephen King's book, The Long Walk. Great film, and if you haven't seen it, you should. But my point is that I think it encapsulates that idea really well. But it also creates this interesting divide between the characters. For the people who think they're going to win, the fit ones and the athletes, the horror's quite slim. Because for them there's an end in sight. They're confident that they're going to win, and if they don't, then they've just let themselves down. They understand the consequences and it's tangible. But for the characters who aren't as fit, who aren't confident that they're going to win, they're living in a completely different type of horror.
Pete, I have made such a fucking massive mistake. I should have just stayed in the fucking car. I should have just gone home.
Because for them, they aren't racing to win. They're just in a constant state of continuing. They're just walking until they're satisfied with their progress, or the pain outweighs the fear. It's exactly the same as that endless hallway. When there's no winning and there's no end in sight, the only real agency that you have is deciding exactly when to give up. But you don't need a death squad behind you to give you this feeling. All you need to do is take the exit away from something. Even natural places start to break down when you remove their ending. A forest where every direction seems infinitely distant, or a flight that never lands, or a train that never reaches its final stop. None of these scenarios are inherently violent, but the lack of a resolution makes them unbearable. And then there's space. It's like the purest form of this idea. A lot of space films aren't only about the aliens, it's also about the scale. The idea of being suspended in a place so large that making progress doesn't even really mean anything. There's no edge to move towards and no sense that you're getting closer to being complete. What I'm saying is, horror doesn't always need escalation. Sometimes it just needs to continue. Another great example of this is the film Vivarium. Another great film to put on your list if you haven't already. On paper, nothing too extreme happens. A couple get trapped in a housing estate and can't leave, and that's basically the entire premise. But there's this one moment that completely reframes the whole setting, and that's when the main character climbs on top of the roof to get their bearings, and the camera pans back to reveal the infinite houses into the distance. Every house looks the same roof color, the same trees, and the same roads leading to the same directions. And it just keeps on going. But up until that point, you assume that there's a trick, maybe something the film hasn't shown us yet, or a way out that they haven't discovered. But once you see those rooftops, I think your hope just dies and you just accept that they're stuck there. Because it stops feeling like a place that the couple accidentally wandered into and more like a place that was designed to hold them. But it's not just the scale that gives you the horror, it's also how little that they affect the environment around them. Time passes and people panic and relationships fall apart, but the neighborhood around them never changes. It stays exactly the same, and it gives you this horrible feeling that you could live there forever without ever being acknowledged. I think this works so well in horror films because humans are so bad at understanding infinity. We talk about it constantly, but we don't really understand it. We're built to think in beginnings, middles, and ends, not forever. The philosopher Immanuel Kant talked about infinity a lot, and how we can't directly experience it. We can only really understand the failure to comprehend it, and that break can be uncomfortable. That's why it's used so much in horror stories. But there's two different types of horror going on here. One knowing something's gonna end, but not when, and the other one not knowing if it ever will end. Okay, for a second, imagine you're falling out of a plane. Is it scarier to see the ground rushing towards you, knowing that the end is coming? Or is it scarier to fall into an infinite void where the ground never comes? At first, the infinite one might sound better, but if you sit with it for long enough, something changes. At some point, you're bound to rather just hit the ground. Not necessarily because you want to die, but because certainty is so much kinder than endless suspension. This brings us on to the scariest film ever made about infinity. And no, it's not Event Horizon. It's the cozy 90s rom-com where Bill Murray learns to play the piano. Because that film proves that if you take away the ability to hit the ground, it stops becoming a superpower and starts becoming some sort of trap. And I'm of course talking about Bill Murray's Groundhog Day. It's remembered as a feel-good film about self-improvement, but when you really think about it, the setup is actually quite brutal. Phil is stuck in a never-ending day, nothing carries over, nothing stacks, and tomorrow never arrives. And the film does a good job of actually showing what that does to someone. At first he treats it like a joke, and then he realizes that there's no consequences. But eventually he just gets tired. There's a stretch in the film where he just starts ending himself. Not in a dramatic way, but just an exhaustion from the situation. The only reason Groundhog Day is put in the family film category and not the psychological horror category is because we're promised an ending. They imply that there's a finish line, that if he grows enough, if he learns the lesson properly, that the loop will end.
Do you know what today is?
No, what?
Today is tomorrow. It happened.
But imagine for a second that it didn't end. If no amount of kindness was enough, and if the day just reset forever. At that point, the loop stops becoming whimsical and just starts becoming torture. Because meaning relies on accumulation. Things matter because they build on each other. But in an infinite loop, nothing builds. You're not improving, you're just rehearsing the improvement forever. But this feeling of horror doesn't always have to be so intense. Kids get it when they're on a long journey, constantly asking when it's going to end. People feel it when they watch a film without a satisfying ending. Not necessarily because the film is sad, but because there's no resolution. It just feels unfinished. And you feel it as well when you're in a conversation that you don't know how to exit out of. It just progressively becomes worse over time. Humans are surprisingly good at tolerating discomfort, as long as we know that there's a finish line. So I want to try something with you guys. I'm going to bounce a ball. That's it. Nothing special is going to happen. There's not going to be a jump scare or any eerie music. But I just want you to comment below how many seconds in you started to feel uncomfortable. And just know that all that's really happening is that time is passing without resolution. Now don't get me wrong, that might not have made you feel uncomfortable. But if it did, the reason that it worked is that nothing in our lives are infinite. And I'm here to tell you that that's a good thing. Endings give moments weight, they give effort meaning, and they give pain a shape. Without endings, there's no resolution. Which is why I think that infinite life is one of the worst concepts that horror can explore. And this is why I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream hits so hard for me. Another really good story that you should read if you have the time. In the story, the supercomputer AM wipes out humanity, except 5 people. Not to kill them, but to keep them alive. They can't escape, they can't meaningfully change, and they can't properly die. And in the final moments of the story, 4 of the characters manage to pass away and break free, while there's 1 left without communication and reduced to something barely recognizable. Still conscious, still alive, but unable to scream. It isn't just horror because of suffering. It's because this suffering has no ending. It's infinite. Most horror stories threaten you with death, but this shows you what happens when death is removed. And maybe that's why endless things unsettle us so badly. Because on some level, we understand that endings aren't cruel. And without them, nothing gets better. Luckily for you, this video has now ended. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.